Uh-oh, hold on. Let me, okay, I think we're good. Welcome to the Energy Week podcast, Ryan Ray, alongside Dr. Energy herself, Ellen Wald. And Ellen, before you say anything else, there's a reason I call you Dr. Energy. You know why that is?
I don't know.
You need a superhero name, we said a long time ago, right? And
Oh, yes.
you're an energy historian and you study energy. However, I think we've made it abundantly clear that you're not a doctor of epidemiology, right?
I'm not a doctor of anything else. I have no medical expertise. I have no expertise in anything other than I mean, I do have some expertise in history. Like if you want to know something about World War One, I'm probably your gal.
Okay. So I don't think I'm an expert at anything except for reading podcast rating reviews, which leads us to where we're starting today. I just saw this and I've been slipping. So it's my fault here. We got a dreaded 1-star podcast review. And so we need to discuss this. This is serious. Um, and we take all reviews and complaints serious here. And so here, hold on, we tweet out that we're live. Oh, that's also the thing. We're now live, so you can follow us on Periscope, Instagram, Periscope, YouTube, etc. So, anyways, tweet this out so folks can see it. Okay, here we go. So we have a 1-star review, and let's take this seriously here. This is from BM Bush 11, whoever that person is. 1 star from September 8th. Serious voice. Podcast has really great and smart industry insight, but it hardly makes what's her face an expert on COVID-19 or anything outside of oil and gas. And I feel like anything should be in bold and italicized there, but it's not. And her giggling co-host doesn't make it better. Love the industry news. Save the sophomore complaining and wading into areas of self-proclaimed expertise that no one download this podcast to hear. Now, I don't know if Mr. Bush or Mrs. Bush or whoever this loser is understands, but it's impressive that the Bush person here was able to go to countries like Kazakhstan or Saudi Arabia or China or some of these folks in Africa, listen, and actually talk to all of our listeners across the world and speak with one voice and one clarity that no one download the podcast to hear us talk about COVID-19. Despite the fact that this podcast has been talking about COVID-19 since January.
Before anybody else thought it was an issue, we were talking about how this was going to affect oil prices. Exactly.
Early on, we're like, okay, it doesn't seem like it's overreaction, no big deal, it doesn't spread. So we've been talking about this for months, and it's not because we want to. we wish that this would be over and done with years ago, or a year ago, or whatever. And so, so the sophomore complaining about people shutting down and ruining people's lives. We are sorry that we sympathize with people whose lives are ruined. We are sorry to see economies destroyed and people literally starving around the world because we have morons running this thing. So we are sorry about that. However, I've never proclaimed to be an expert in anything, and you were only Dr. Energy. And we say that every episode. So I don't know where this self-proclaimed expert is. So maybe Mr. Bush or Mrs. Bush, whoever this is, should learn that they're not a self-proclaimed expert in actually listening. So let's work on listening and then come back and give us another 1-star review when you have time. So anyways, that was my quick sophomore COVID-19 giggling rant of the day. However, we will, just to stick it to Bush, we'll start with COVID-19 again. Oil prices rise on COVID-19 vaccine news. Yay, Ellen. Here we go. The oil prices are up. Okay, now I'm a little worried here. I have WTI going sub 35 before the end of the year. We're at $43 right now. It's $42.96.
43.
It is. WTI is at $42.96. We'll just call it 43 to make it easy. Brent's at $45.95. We're right there. Like I'm sitting here going, what in the world is going on with this? Hold on. We have a comment coming in. For the record, the sophomore complaining and the giggling is precisely why I downloaded this podcast. Mr. Bush does not speak for the entire audience. So thank you, Joe, for that. Okay, oil prices are up. Obviously, the vaccine news keeps coming out. Although today or yesterday we heard that one is only 70% effective. It seems like the more we get, the less effective they are. I don't know how that works.
Okay, can we just talk about this for a minute? Because I'll be the first to admit I'm not an expert in statistics or numbers. In fact, I will admit that I was really terrible at math in like all of elementary school, like really horrible. I could not learn my multiplication tables, like
Mhm,
really
mhm,
bad.
mhm, mhm.
That I did change that around, and I did pretty well in high school, but so I'm still stuck on this like 90 or 95% um, percent effectiveness. And maybe it's just how people in the drug community do these things, and someone can explain this to me. But if you look at, so they gave this vaccine, they did say a trial of like 20,000 people, and they gave the vaccine to half of the people, and the other half of the people didn't get the vaccine. Okay. And a certain number of people got the virus in the segment who did not get the vaccine. And many fewer people got the virus in the segment that did get the vaccine. But wouldn't you be measuring that effectiveness out of the total number of people who actually did get the virus instead of out of the whole 20,000 group? Like, I mean, maybe this is just how drug people do their calculations, and I'm not familiar with that, seeing as I am not an expert in that sort of thing. But it just seems to me like that's what are we
Yeah.
saying is effective here? Because not like only like 100 or 200 people got the virus to start with. It's not like they shot everyone up with a vial of virus and then saw if it was effective. They went out and lived their lives.
Right. I'm no expert either, so we got to preface that now so Bush don't get mad again. Kaiser Fung, who I will link to a book of his in the live stream here, but he put out a podcast about this. I just not podcast, an article about this. I just linked to it if you follow the live stream, and he says vaccine efficiency, so VE of 90% means that the vaccine. I'm sorry, I can't read, so there we go. VE of 90% means the vaccine cut infections by 90%. It does not mean 90% of those vaccinated will not get sick.
Ah, okay. Well, that helps a lot. Okay,
So cutting
okay.
infections by 90% means that the case rate in the vaccinated group is 0.1%. Throughout the discussion, I referred to it. So I've linked to this. So you can go kind of read it. He gets into the numbers here a little bit, but it is a different when you hear that, like, oh. And then I heard some discussion the other day saying that if you go read some of these papers that they put out, that how they're measuring whether or not the vaccine is effective is pretty vague. Like, okay, Ellen, did you have a sore throat? Was it worse or better? And so I've heard, again, I don't get in trouble by Bush here, but, I think that's what they're getting at there, according to Kaiser Fung, and let's see if I can pop a link to his,
Okay.
but it's good.
That actually helps a lot in the understanding of what this means. But apparently, none of that is of matters to the oil market, which seems to think that it's all gone now or something.
Mhm.
Because we're seeing, and I've been saying for weeks, and I've gotten a lot of flack for this on investing.com in the comment section, which I violate my cardinal rule, just don't read the comments on things that you write, and yet I always read the comments. I'm not really sure why I always read the comments in investing.com, but apparently people were really giving me a lot of crap for being so negative when it comes to oil, except that the fundamentals for a really long time have still been pretty darn negative. Like, we've still got too much supply and not enough demand. And then with Europe basically shutting down, it really looked like things were going good to get worse before they were going to get better. It just seems like now, I mean, I know everyone's trying to point to like, oh, well, diesel demand was looking up in October. And yeah, I was looking up in October, but what about when we go to look at those November?
Mhm.
We had Dr. Dean Foreman on last week, and he was pointing out a number of fairly positive signs that we were seeing in October. But we're almost done with November, and when we go to look at the November numbers, I surmise it's going to be less. And then when you factor in, I know everyone's like, "Oh my God, 1 million people flew in airports this weekend." Well, if you compare that to what it should be or what it was last year, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, so I think you're right that if the market looks at the numbers kind of year on year, as you're saying, it'd be stunning if they're good. If they look at them and kind of in isolation and go, well, compared to 2 weeks ago, you might see the market, kind of go, trend the wrong way. I'm trying to find Gas Buddy. I'm trying to see here if he has a recent chart, and I don't see one.
He
The
promised me he was going to give me a heads up on the survey that they did over how many people are planning to travel for Thanksgiving, but I haven't yet heard.
Okay,
Apparently, it's not good.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was looking at his saying, breaking news, at least. Former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will return as climate czar in Joe Biden's team.
I
Uh,
did hear that.
that's from Javier Blas. Whatever his name is.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
sure that he's going to be just as successful as he was at the Iran deal.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's lovely. So uh, one of the things that I thought about, we talked about this morning, Text on Gas podcast on is that, we've had like a dozen people maybe who have gotten the coronavirus twice, and that's big news. What happens when the first person who gets the vaccine gets it?
Gets a virus.
Yeah.
It'll be big news on all the newspapers, and they'll say you have to get back into your house, and it's well, you know what? No. I think it's gonna be well. I think we're gonna get a lot of very strong messaging about this is how vaccines work. They're not 100%. Sometimes this happens. Don't freak out. Get your vaccination, and don't sell your Moderna or your Pfizer stock.
But that I think will be the real test of how the media handles COVID-19 moving forward, because we've had literally a handful of cases, I don't know globally, but in the US, a handful of cases of people getting coronavirus twice, at least allegedly. So the first time we have a busted someone who gets vaccination gets busted for having it, or not busted, but test positive for having it, how will the media handle it? If they go and lose their mind, then the vaccine is going to be a zero, because then people are going to go, why am I getting it? Da, da, da. If they do downplay it as you suggest, then I think that might be interesting. But those are the kind of stories that sadly we're going to follow to see before we can get back to demand. How will the media respond to the negative COVID stories after Trump's second term starts?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to add that we're not the only ones who think that prices are detached from actual, from reality. Because Reuters does quote a PVM analyst as saying that the news was detaching sentiment from gloomy fundamentals. Quote: investors are ignoring near-term headwinds, chief among which are surging global COVID infections, and instead looking ahead to next summer. Did you hear that? Apparently, prices are reflecting next summer's demand, despite the fact that those contracts are not what's actually reflected in the WTI price or the Brent price.
And I don't know when the flu numbers start to show. Like I don't follow the flu stuff really that closely.
I
Um,
thought there's no flu this year.
well, okay.
There's no flu. It's all corona.
But you're right. You do expect a point here in late December, early January, where you could get back to the hospitals kind of being overrun because you have flu season going on top of COVID eternity going through. So I don't know how the numbers don't get worse for oil and gas before they get better. And that's not, just so everybody's clear. I have made my living on oil and gas since 2005. So it's not that I wish the industry bad or hard. Like that's where I live at. So I don't wish them ill. It's just it just seems to be more so the time. Okay, this story, I'm glad you included it because I've seen this and I'm not sure if it's getting the coverage it deserves. China set to eclipse America as world's biggest oil refiner. Now, this is quite interesting because it's going to depend on how Biden handles China, but I suspect there's enough ill will in the country, especially in DC, towards China, that he's going to have to be careful. I don't think he can just open up the hey, we're going to go work with China tomorrow. And there's plenty of Republicans who view China as the enemy. Whatever you think about that, that's just kind of their stance. Well, we have troops in the Middle East to protect our foreign interests, and so now China is going to pass us in refining. I'm surprised the Republicans haven't really messaged this a little bit differently. Like, regulations are too tight. We're losing our refineries to China. This is bad. What are we gonna do when they hold us hostage? I'm surprised this hadn't caught on a little bit
Yeah.
more nationally.
Yeah, let's look at some of these stats that they say. It said, okay, so it says that they're comparing the closing of this Louisiana refinery, which is okay. I kind of take a little bit of an issue with them using Shell's closing the Convent refinery in Louisiana as the prime example here, because Shell is a particular case. It's like actively trying to divest itself of the thing that made it a company, which is oil and gas. And that they've been looking to try to sell that refinery for a while before they just decided to close it. So I don't think that's like the best example, but okay. So they're closing this refinery, and then they're contrasting it with this new unit of of a new petrochemicals complex in northeast China that's just getting started. And it says it's one of at least 4 projects underway in the country, totaling 1.2 million barrels a day of crude processing capacity, equivalent to the UK's entire fleet. So think about that. Okay, but here's the thing. This was like Ali al-Naimi knew this. This was coming. Like this was why Aramco invested in refining, or wanted to invest in refining in China for so long, because this was a country that was coming with huge numbers of people who all want mobility, and they all want to buy plastics, and they want stuff, and everything we make now is made of plastic. So it was going to become a huge center for refining and petrochemicals, and they invested in it early. Now it's taking off. I think that, if you look at we should have seen this. Like, how could we not have known that this is what would happen when, 4 years ago, China just bought and bought and bought and bought oil and has so much in storage? Like, what are they going to do with all that? It's like I always say, like, oil doesn't, you can't do anything with it unless you refine it or turn it into something else. Like, it can sit on, my bookshelf like I have, but, it doesn't do anything for you. And so obviously they were going to then build refining. They were going to like send their crude, they were going to buy crude oil, store it, and then send it to like Japan for refining. They're going to refine it and they're going to sell it. They're going to use it and they're going to sell it. So I don't think it's at all surprising that this is happening. I think the issue is the US, does a lot of refining. We sell refined products. We use a lot of refined products. We certainly wouldn't want to end up beholden to China in terms of the source of our products. So how ironic would it be if we suddenly we're still a big producer of oil, but we got to ship it to China to get refined and come back. So I think that would be ridiculous, and we certainly need to make sure that doesn't happen. But at the same time, I don't think that China growing in refining and petrochemicals capacity means that we're necessarily losing out. It just means that, like, even if our products, even if it was cheaper for them to import our refined products, they'd probably still be building their own stuff, just because, like, that's what they do. Like, they would probably see it as like a national security thing, just like we would see it as a national security issue.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I shared this link out, but I'll go through this again. Oil consumption per capita, per 1,000 people. The U.S. ranks 22, and really, it really is number one. But if you look at some of those, 1 through 21, it's just a bunch of small islands, or really small countries. So the per capita kind of gets out of whack. But U.S. is basically number one. China is 127. Okay. India is 165, and Pakistan is 170. And let's see here, and we talk about the median income of China. So the kind of notion that China is not going to blow past us in oil consumption is not based in any reality. And so, what, as you said, what should they do? Should they build their own refineries, or should they keep being dependent on the U.S. or whomever else to sell to them? And then on top of that, if you're China and you have India and Pakistan and all these other places right nearby, why not try to cut the cost of that shipping a little bit, make it a little closer? Now, obviously, they're in a little bit of tiff with India, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. I'm just surprised from the messaging standpoint, the Republicans haven't tried to use this to, blame the Democrats for over stuff and stuff like that. But it makes sense. The question is, Ellen, though, could we find ourselves in 5 to 10 years where we're going, okay, well, our refineries are, we're really dependent on Chinese oil now. It's not Chinese, not necessarily produced from China, but refined from China. And how could that impact future trade deals or
I think that Europe is actually more likely to face that problem first than we are. But I would definitely, if I were a European country, I would definitely have that on my radar as a thing to be concerned about.
Well, they're buying from Russia, so China's really not. I mean, like, whatever. whatever. Okay. Speaking of India, they're going to double oil refining capacities in 5 years, earlier than expected. Again, this goes back to the per capita numbers I number that I just referred to. All of these countries. So, real quick, let's put a pause here. Anyone who thinks Ellen's down on oil or I'm down on oil, it's all of the actual long term fundamental signs are great for oil. It's just how long until we get back to that point, we don't know. But the long-term oil, market is very is I'm very, bullish or whatever you call it. But this is another sign. And so one
Yeah.
of Ellen, real quick, is, just on India refining its oil, they have so many taxes on, like, their gasoline and stuff. Well, will this if they start refining more oil there, which could, a new revenue stream, would they use that maybe to offset some of those taxes that they're charging for gasoline?
That would probably be a smart move. I mean, they've got, it's interesting because, their oil consumption is really growing. There's been some, interest from Aramco to get into the Indian refining, situation there, but I think they are looking to really increase it because, um, I mean, he wants to double it in the next 5 years, which is, a big task, but I think it's something that they need. Otherwise, they're going to end up being, I mean, otherwise they're going to end up like importing from, Iran, assuming the sanctions are removed in the next year or so. I mean, what's to stop Iran from from building new refineries and exporting refined products to India? I'm sure they love that. And India would rather buy from Iran than China. China's a big, I think China will do well selling around, the Asian kind of area. They'll sell a lot in their area, and because I think they already have those, those connections worked out. But people are not paying attention so much to India, and India's demand is growing, and they might be able to do better when they, in terms of their taxes, or they'll just keep the taxes and, put more on.
Yeah, agreed, I guess is the short answer here. Let's move on. Abu Dhabi boosts reserves with unconventional oil. There was it me and you talking about this debate over unconventional oil? Someone sent me this the other day. Did you see that about how unconventional oil is? I know it was. They sent me a thing and said that, basically oil and gas is dead because conventional oil, um, has peaked. Have you seen those?
So that brings me all back to like the Hubbard curve, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, is that back? Conventional oil has peaked, and because his point was like that the number of discovery, the rate of discovery and the number of discoveries and the size of discovery was going to peak, and people were like, no, 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 actually, it turns out there's a lot more. And then the people who agreed with it with the Hubbard curve were like, yeah, but these discoveries are all like much more difficult to produce, and they're not quite as much, and it's not like the same thing. But I think we've gotten to the point where we say unconventional oil, that doesn't even necessarily mean it's all that more expensive to produce. I mean, unless we're talking about like tar sand stuff, like in
Mhm,
Venezuela and Canada, that requires like you've basically got to like process it in order to move it because it's so thick. Like
mhm,
we're not, is it really going to cost all that much more than if you discovered a conventional, um, you know, like offshore oil discovery? I mean, is it really like very seriously? Like there have been a lot of gains in terms of the cost of producing unconventional resources. I'm not convinced that it's really all that. I think it's just a different process, and the costs are spent in a different way. Like with conventional stuff, you've got to, you got to outlay a lot of infrastructure right at the beginning. So, say
mhm,
you discover a new offshore field, you've got to put in a lot of costs right at the beginning and to develop the stuff, and then it basically like does itself. With unconventional, it's a different way of spending, and
mhm.
so at this point, I'm not sure that argument really holds up. Like, does it really matter?
Right, so I'm trying to find I know who sent it to me now. I'm trying to find the headline. It's been a few weeks back, and this guy's point let's see here if I can Yeah, here it is. No, that's not it. I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, anyways, so I'll look for this chart. Oh yeah, here it is. Here it is. This is from Blair Fix on Twitter. I don't know if it's his real name. Yeah, Blair Fix. He said, "Remember Peakle? It was all the rage a decade ago. Now almost no one's talking about it. Funny thing is, it's happening just as predicted. Here's the global production on conventional crude oil, along with predictions from Halleck and et al." And so let me see here if I can show this on the screen. I don't know. I've never tried such a thing. I don't know if I can. Anyways, I'll send it to you. But anyways, his point is, there's got to be a way to show this real quick. There it is. There it is. There it is. Share screen. Okay. Yeah. Chrome tab. Okay. Oh, look at me going. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can now. Very
Okay.
cool.
Yeah. So if you look at his chart here, and for the listeners, we'll include this tweet in the show notes. You can see he's showing that peak productions in 2005.
Yeah, except that I'm just not sure. Like, does it really matter?
Well, I
Does
mean,
it really matter? I mean, it's interesting, but it also might be because, well, in 2005 it wouldn't be because of cost.
well, but I mean, but hold on, just real quick. We consumed 100 million barrels a day in 2019, right?
Yeah, give
And
or
he's
take.
saying that peak oil, global production of conventional oil peaked at around just shy of 25 million barrels. Oh, this is billion barrels a day in 2005. So he's saying that production is down since then. And okay, so obviously it's down this year, right? But when you say this, it's like, well, okay, well, are you saying conventional? Are you talking about like U.S. conventional oil? Like, you have a pump jack instead of your fracking? Because U.S. production has been up since 2005, I think, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I mean,
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how he's defining conventional oil. What kind of data is he sourcing? Like, how is he sourcing data for that?
yeah. And so I'm trying to see here if he's got something else here. I found it interesting to say that it's there's the paper link to that as well. Anyways, I just found it interesting that he's saying that let's see, I get rid of that production peaked in 2005. If you're saying conventional oil peaked in 2005, that's one thing. That's not global oil production though, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
And so the wording on this sometimes can be a little tricky with my larger um, my larger point. So if you go to Saudi Arabia, what they're doing with their oil fields, as I understand it, would be what we consider more conventional oil than horizontal fracking, right?
Yeah, but they also say that they have unconventional oil fields. They just, I think, maybe have a slightly different definition of it. Like when I was there and I asked them about unconventional, they're like, oh no, we have unconventional, oil fields. I'm not sure that that's the same. I think when we talk about unconventional, we mean fracking, and
Mhm.
I don't think that I think they have a much more expansive definition of unconventional.
Sure. And so that's the thing. You get into definitions here. It's like, okay, conventional, unconventional. Who's saying it? What means it?
But can we talk about the capex that that Abu Dhabi approved to spend on this oil field? Because wow, it blows everything else that anyone else is spending right now out of the water. They
120
approved
billion?
$122 billion in capex for the coming 5 years.
That's a lot of
I
money.
mean, Ramco was going to spend 40 billion like a year over 5 years, and they've cut that so much. Like, wow. I mean, if you you want to know where like the world's oil is coming from in the next, in 5 years, Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it says they claim the licensing rounds to sustain its long-term production capacity target of 5 million barrels a day by 2030 and approved. How do you pronounce their currency, Ellen? 450
Dirhams.
dirhams,
Dirhams.
122 billion US dollars. For those of you who needed help with the conversion there, I'll help you out with that. That's a lot of scratch. That's a lot of scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is this why you're seeing the Fly Emirates, not the Fly Emirates, Visit Abu Dhabi commercial on the UFC?
Oh
Fight?
yeah, they really want you to visit Abu Dhabi. I mean, well, they want to show that they have something other than oil in Abu Dhabi. By the way, Abu Dhabi, great place. I've been there twice. You know, it's a great place. Nice hotels, beaches, stuff like that. Um, It's not as like dense as Dubai. But I just think it's incredible how much they want to spend on capex at a time when everybody else is cutting capex. And I think that it reminds us that you really cannot discount the role of the NOC
Mhm.
in traditional oil and gas. And yes, I know this is unconventional, but we can still call it traditional oil and gas. And while we've got the oil majors, like you've got Exxon and Chevron, and I mean Chevron hasn't necessarily cut that much, but everyone has cut, including Aramco. But you've got other oil majors out there who aren't cutting, and I think that says something significant about where they think the oil market is going. And also, if you think about it, the oil minister for the UAE, Suhail Mazrui, has always consistently been saying this. Remember when he went to that like Calgary thing? There
Mhm.
was like some conference in Calgary. It was like last year, the year before, and he was wearing a cowboy hat, and he's like, we're really concerned about the lack of capital expenditures being put into oil, and we think that this is going to lead to an oil shortage in the future. And he was really like, he's consistently been really, he's always been bringing this point up, whereas and I think that this probably is a reflection of that he feels very strongly that there's going to be there's not going to be enough oil, and because people aren't spending anything now. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is a result of that.
Okay, very nice. Now this one, I'm glad you another one. You read my mind today. I felt like folks. Ellen picks the articles for the show because she's the doctor. She's the expert here. I'm the giggling co-host.
I thought it was because I was addicted to the news.
So this story, I've seen kind of mixed reports on it. So
Yeah,
Israel.
I think it's actually like developing now. So we can add the latest that I've heard. So like the big question is,
Well,
did
yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
you go ahead, or you go ahead.
Yeah, so we got from the Wall Street Journal, Israel Netanyahu, Saudi Crown Prince hold first known meeting. Known is a very important word there. As you come on
Yes.
the show, there's a lot of stuff that happens that they don't like to talk about. And then this is from the New York Times. I don't know if I'm backwards here. Yeah, it's from this 11:33 Eastern Time. Israeli reports say Netanyahu met Saudi Crown Prince, but the Saudis deny it. Dun dun
Oh
dun.
yeah. Oh, they totally denied it. The Saudis totally, yeah, it took like a bit of a while, but they totally denied it. And so now everyone is looking at like flight records and stuff to see if they were actually there. So here's the latest. I'm looking on Twitter. This comes from um, a Ynet news reporter, for in Tel Aviv, and he says that the secret meeting at NEOM, Saudi Arabia's Prince MBS arrived from Riyadh in an executive plane. Then he gives the number. Prime Minister Netanyahu arrived from Tel Aviv on an executive plane, and U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo arrived from Abu Dhabi on a U.S. Air Force plane. And he shows all three of the flight thing. You go on that like radar thing, and you can look at the flights to say that yes, they were there. So that's interesting.
Okay, so is what you're telling? Okay, here's 2021 prediction. Trump leaves office, Biden takes over. We have peace in the Middle East. Trump gets nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, but before he can be and awarded it, however, he's indicted and thrown in jail, and so therefore the Nobel Peace Prize is revoked, and then Biden pardons Trump, and then they give him the Nobel Peace Prize. That's 2021. That's my prediction.
That's 2021. That's like the least, like, yeah, I could see that happening.
It's like yeah,
I mean, come on, like if you'd asked me in March if I thought everyone would be wearing a mask to go to the grocery store, I would have
right,
said, "What the
right,
heck are you talking about?" So
right.
at this point, I'm open to anything, really.
Yeah. So, um,
I my I'm not convinced that this is portending, a peace treaty. Although I've heard from some people in the kingdom, or at least who say they know that this thing is like literally about to happen.
so
But it could also be that they were discussing like how to, screw over Iran some more.
So let's take it from this perspective. So if tomorrow, okay, pre-election, if Donald Trump was on the campaign trail and he said, "Hey, listen, Hillary wasn't so bad. We should cut her some slack." His supporters would start chanting, lock her up," and boo and mockingly boo him. Like
Of
they would not.
course, they would think it was a joke.
Right. They wouldn't take it seriously. So my question is if from both sides, if the Israelis or the Saudis come out tomorrow and say, you know what, it's time to put bygones aside, how will their supporters take that?
Yeah. So
So
this is a huge deal. So there's a big difference between the population of Saudi Arabia and the population of UAE and Bahrain and these other countries that have been making agreements with Israel. And the big difference there is, first of all, the Saudi population is a lot bigger. You have to realize, like, most people who live in the UAE are not Emiratis. They're expats who work there. So that's an issue. And Saudi Arabia, okay, take another step back. The leadership in the Arab world has often been seen as, like, who can say or who stands up and says we are going to defend the rights of the Palestinian people and stick it to the Israelis. So at first it was a big, like, Egypt, and Nasser was like, well, I'm the defender of the Palestinian people and follow me, and that was like his way of saying, like, I'm the leader of the Arab world, follow me. Okay. And Saddam Hussein tried that in the 90s. Okay. So it's always been a thing. Saudi Arabia has never been like, rah rah, we're gonna, like, go to war and send tanks, because that's not what they do. They don't really have that big of an army, but they've always been very big in monetary support of Palestinians. Okay. But that often means, like, building their own mosques and whatnot. The biggest issue is when it comes to, like, education in Saudi Arabia, and the education there has been very, very virulently anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian. And so you've got lots and lots of people who, while, like, the monarchy may have a more pragmatic view, and I've actually done historical research into this and shown, I have actual documents that I can point to that say that Abdulaziz ibn Saud really didn't care that much about Israel. When it was founded, his basic concern was, Americans, will you still buy my oil and, like, run this oil industry? That was his biggest concern. And also his other concern was that he didn't want Israel to try to expand beyond its territory, because he was very concerned about his border with Jordan. And if Israel expanded into Jordan, then it could threaten him. So basically that was what he expressed to the American diplomats who were in Saudi Arabia at the time in 1948. It wasn't like he's like, look, I'm going to have to stand up and say that I don't want this, but it's not going to wreck my relationship with the U.S. The U.S. has always been a more important relationship. So it doesn't surprise me, but that, that this. So if you think about that beginning, I don't think Saudi Arabia has ever been all that, like, anti-Israel at its core. I think it's the education system, and also the current king, King Salman, is known for, like, being a real stickler, like, really very, very anti-Israel. He said that, like, I mean, he told the ambassador he told the ambassador from the United States at the time that he thought that Israel was behind 9/11. So I think it's the current king. Now, I have been, people there tell me that, this has changed a lot. First of all, Solomon's not calling the shots really anymore, but also that, that they have done such an incredible job at pushing this anti-Iran narrative, that really that's the most important thing now. And that a lot of people are willing to, like, they're basically like, Israel is our, like, partner against Iran. And they're kind of willing to, like, give up on this. Now, I don't know if that's true, but we do know that MBS has pretty well taken care of dissent from the religious class. So from from the imam stuff, he's not going to face, none of them are going to stand up to him at this point, because he's basically thrown everyone in jail who doesn't parrot exactly what he wants. So you're not going to see that. So the question is, so if he goes and does, I think they saw the UAE as, like, a test run. They wanted to see, like, how do people in the UAE react to this? And basically people in the UAE were like, the government wants it, like we will now wave Israeli flags and we will, go visit Israel and things like that. And we want to welcome their doctors and all this stuff. Now, is the Saudi population going to react like that? I don't know. There's a case to be made that they might, but there's also a case to be made that they have had, that the virulent anti-Israel sentiment that they have grown up with and has been inculcated in their education system is still an important aspect in their lives, and that what they know now is that they can't say anything. So they will individually be like, "Ugh, why are we doing this? This is a horrible idea. I don't like those Israelis," but they will not say anything because they're too scared of being thrown in jail. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I am reading, I think it's Neil Ferguson, Empire, about the British Empire. Have you read this book by chance?
No,
So,
I have not. I think I have strong thoughts about Neil Ferguson.
oh, well, please do tell.
I'm not a fan.
Not a fan. Okay.
I'm not a fan. I
Why is
think
that?
he's like thinks he knows too much and can like interpret all the threads of the world.
He's sophomore
But
and he's giggling. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
We got you. So, well,
But please
yeah.
tell me what he says.
No,
It's
it's
really
not
not an excuse for not reading it.
It's not him. He's quoting someone else, and he's quoting a gentleman by the name of Cobden, I believe, from 1856.
Hmm.
And Cobden is talking about, so what Ferguson's trying to balance is what is the British Empire, a good thing or a bad thing? And so he's talking about, the good thing as far as, commerce and law, and then obviously you have slavery and stuff like that. And so Cobden, I guess, was arguing back in his day, or whenever he wrote this book, that, let's see if I can find the exact quote, because it's interesting. Okay, I can't find the quote. But Cobden basically, I hope I'm saying that right. Cobden's point was that if you allowed for free trade to happen, yes, thus there was no need for an empire. Trade would take care of itself and everything else too, including world peace. In May of 1856, Cobden went so far as to say that it would be a happy day when England has not an acre of territory in the continental Asia. And so
Wow. He was ahead of his time.
right. So what I'm getting at with the relevance here with the Middle East is, if they open things up and they allow for the Saudis and the Israelis to trade and to have commerce, and you might be able to repair the damage a lot quicker than if you're trying to message it, well, we're allied against Iran, and we're fighting these guys, and those are all things that, and the book talks about that on some level, that those things do sometimes have positive results because you kind of force the issue, but then you create these other things that you have to deal with later on. So hopefully the Saudis and the Israelis, and peace in the Middle East. We've been saying that for ever. So maybe we can get there. But I would argue just for the Saudi and the Israelis, just a little bit of free trade, a little commerce.
Yeah. Well, I've been saying this for a while. So I actually wrote a while ago, back in when I used to write for Arab News, I wrote a column basically saying, like, I was writing about the UAE because that was kind of like a safe area, but I was saying, like, they would really benefit in terms of trade if they started a relationship with Israel trade-wise. Like, it would be a huge benefit to the UAE to do this, especially if they're the first ones. And, it's getting to the point now where, like, Saudi Arabia is going to get left out if they don't, I mean, I've always been wondering when they like inaugurated this idea of NEOM, which I still think is a totally ridiculous, crazy idea. But like, you're going to make it some sort of international city, or like, open, like with owned or whatever by all these countries in the Middle East, and you're going to leave out Israel?
Right.
Come on.
Right. Okay, Miss Walt, I think that is all of the articles that we have for today. Unless I missed one, that's it, right? Okay.
No, that's it.
So it's a short week. Will you be anywhere this week, or will you just be sitting around eating turkey?
I will be sitting around eating turkey, but that doesn't mean that I am neglecting my duties. I will be on investing.com. I believe my column will probably be coming a day early because usually it comes out on Thursdays, but that's Thanksgiving. So I will probably publish on Wednesday, and I should be on Forbes too. So check it out.
Okay, and I will be doing what every red-blooded American will be doing. I will be having people at my house. I'll be going to people's house, I'll be eating turkey. I will be doing my part to revitalize the oil and gas industry because I'm not a communist. And so I will be there, raring to go and hoping not to get COVID because I will think about that exactly 0 times over the next week. Anyways, so that's what I will be doing, and I hope listeners that if you got like stage 4 cancer, or you're at high risk, or you're on the organ donor list, or whatever it is, okay, I'm not encouraging you to go do anything, but if you're like the rest of us, consider having a normal Thanksgiving. That's all. That's all. Just consider it. Just at least let it sit and simmer. Because if Gavin Newsom can go out with all of his buddies with no mask on, he probably thinks it's a lot safer than he's telling you. That's all I'll say. So, Miss Wald, that is my COVID sophomore feeling rant of the day. Anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to my brother who liked our live stream on Twitter. Made me a little nervous to know that someone's actually watching. So.
Yeah. So,
hey,
yeah.
Ben.
Yes. Hey, Ben. Okay, that's who that is. I didn't know that was. And so he follows me. So the pressure's really even on now. So
everyone should follow him because he writes really awesome stuff about baseball.
Okay,
or at least he used to.
Wait, is this the guy that used to work for the Yankees?
Yep.
Oh gosh. Okay, I went to block him on Twitter.
He's actually a Phillies fan. So.
Phillies fan. Okay, well that's marginally better. Let me just say this. Thank you, Joe. We'll be back, and obviously the podcast is still going, but we have the functionality to live stream. So now you can go and interact. We can, if we have enough people following along, we can take questions or hear people making fun of us for sophomore rants. And we'll be back next week.